6:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk. Joan, I don't know if you had this in your news, but J.D. Vance has now arrived.
Yes, so I'm seeing.
So that means that either one of two things is happening. They're not confident that they're going to get all the votes necessary to do this cleanly. If they lose three, if the Republicans lose three senators, then they need J.D. Vance there to break the tie. Or J.D. Vance is there to be the negotiator, the guy that's going to come in and, try to play the good cop as opposed to Donald Trump getting on the phone with somebody and just reaming them a new one to get them to, sign on to this bill, which I don't think is going to work. J.D. Vance is there to try to maybe talk some people into supporting the bill that perhaps are being a little slow to accept, the greatness of, the big, beautiful bill.
Okay, so I have a little bit on this. We know that we lost Tom Tillis.
Yep.
We know that we have lost Rand Paul.
Yes.
So now it's the two agitators, the two Republican agitators, and that's Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, have both also...
We're in big trouble.
We're in big trouble. So
we've lost four. If we lose four, then it's going down.
Right. So what's happening is Susan Collins has proposed an amendment that failed that said she wanted the nation's most wealthy people to have a tax rate higher than it currently is to pay for everything in the bill. And they said no. And Lisa Murkowski wanted a carve-out so that Medicaid in her state would not be like illegals would still be able to have anybody. There would be no cuts, no work requirement, nothing, just for her state.
And she's a Republican.
And she's a Republican.
Oh.
So
well, she's really not.
Right. And the parliamentarian said no dice. So, it's those two that have long been the thorn on our sides.
Yep.
The spur under the saddle, that are holding things up. So now J.D. Vance is coming in with maybe he'll strong arm them, maybe he'll do something, say something, provide something that would make them get on board.
Okay, so I think the only one, because I don't think Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins, I don't think they're going to help. I sure as heck don't think Tom Tillis is going to help.
Do you think Rand Paul?
Rand Paul. I think it'll be Rand Paul. Do you have an opinion? Who do you think will be because I think it's got to pass. So if one of them's going to give in, I think it's going to be Rand Paul.
Yeah, I think Tom Tillis has taken that step that, he said, look, I'm willing to step back and not, I'm willing to spend more time with my family than be in the Senate.
Yeah.
So, once you've taken that step and gone that far, well, you're not going to turn back.
Right. And I don't think, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, I mean, we all know how bullheaded women can be. So I don't think they're going to change their minds.
Hang on, mister.
I'm kidding. I do believe that it'll be Rand Paul because I do believe that he is the most reasonable.
Okay.
And by the way, for you folks that are, we knew Mandis was in favor of the bill. No, I believe that it is a good bill. I'm going to have to believe when Donald Trump and, Bill Hagerty and people that I trust are going to say that there will be growth based on the tax cuts, I'm going to believe them. I am worried about the debt. I am. But I also know that there are a lot of good things in this bill for the American people.
And President Trump's tariffs, which are streaming in, they're not. There's no consideration for the money that's being brought into the Treasury from the tariffs.
Yes, that is number one. That is a great point. And, I spoke to Senator Hagerty the other day, and he was talking about, I played the soundbite a couple of different times the next day, where he says, the CBO, when they come with these, the analysis that it's going to add whatever it is to the national debt, well, they don't take into account the full picture. They don't take into account the money that will actually be made with lower taxes, because when you lower the taxes, then people are getting more of their money back, and that means they're spending more. When you're giving businesses tax breaks, that means that they can do more investing in, research and development, and they can hire people. So there's a lot of things in here that will spur economic growth. So am I still concerned? Absolutely, I'm concerned. But here's the thing, is that I believe that the American people deserve to continue to be able to have those tax breaks. That's number one. And number two, I think that the Democrats, I think they are absolutely insane for voting against the American people having not only a tax break, but a bigger tax break at that. So I thought it was interesting, as all of this is going down yesterday, need some audio. Markwayne Mullin, he is, of course, a Republican senator, and he was on Fox News talking about how he's been very frustrated with what he calls a dog and pony show.
Bill, we're going through this vote of Rama. We'll probably finish up late tonight. I would say just because the dog and pony show, the Democrats want to show that they're fighting, which is just like a spoiled child. So they're probably going to go through the primetime shows. Sometimes after the primetime shows go off the air, they'll probably quit their fight around 11 o'clock Eastern time or so.
Well, he was off the mark on that one because it is still going this morning. But when he said that this is a dog and pony show, Joan, have you heard some of these people on some of these Democrats on social media where they're talking straight into the camera. They're speaking very seriously.
Oh, gosh.
And
more performative stuff
like Chuck Schumer.
Democrats are kicking off vote-a-rama, and we're going to make the Republicans vote on amendment after amendment after amendment that shows just who they are. Taking people's health care away so people might die, taking food out of the mouths of hungry children, all to help their billionaire buddies. They're going to walk on a lot of hot coals all day.
Now, first of all, I think it's silly for him to say that Republicans are taking food out of the mouths of children when in reality, in this bill, they want to increase the child tax credit and they want to have those $1,000 Trump accounts for newborn kids. So the reality and the facts are completely opposite of what Chuck Schumer's narrative is right here. Then we've got crying Alex Padilla.
This bill is fundamentally about one thing and one thing only: cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans.
So, I mean, that's just simply not true. You know what I feel like sometimes? I feel like, we were talking yesterday about Amy Coney Barrett and about how she was incredibly dismissive about the Ketanji Brown Jackson and her legal opinions. Remember that whole thing where there is a big battle on the Supreme Court where it seems like all the other justices, seriously, the more conservative judges, they're not even going to bother with Ketanji Brown Jackson because she really, honestly, from a legal standpoint, she doesn't know anything near as to what she should know. She just doesn't. And so Amy Coney Barrett says, we're not even going to bother with it. That's kind of how I'm feeling with some of these Democrats, like for example, crying Alex Padilla. A few more random senators for good measure.
This bill would add more than $3 trillion to the national debt.
It seems as if it was drafted just to make a mockery of the wills and wishes of the majority of people in this country,
creating chaos for state budgets and hardship for families.
I mean, it goes on and on. Hardship for families. Please tell me with the tax credit, please tell me how this is going to be a hardship for families. Please tell me with the tax cuts and the higher standard deduction, how exactly is this going to be tougher for American families? Oh, wait a minute. It's not. 6:15, time to check the roads on WTN. As far as your weather goes, today a high of 88, possible thunderstorms as well. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News. So you just heard a whole bunch of Democrats fear-mongering, of course, and frankly lying through their teeth about this bill. And just so you know, I'm not emotionally attached to this bill like some of these folks are. I'm really not. But number one, I do see the benefits of this bill. And number two, it really ticks me off when I know that these Democrats are lying through their teeth. John Rose, the congressman, was on my show yesterday, and he did say, yes, this is all about growth. growth that is going to come through giving the American people more of their own money to spend. And that does spur the economy.
So it is absolutely true. If you look at the overall impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill, obviously when I say the largest tax increase in American history, you could look at it the other way and say if we don't pass this, tax decrease, if we don't pass this on January 1st, we would have the largest tax increase in American history. And so the biggest feature of the One Big Beautiful Bill is that it provides certainty to Americans, particularly small businesses and businesses all across this country, about what their tax future is going to be.
One of the things that happens in these moments is that the Democrats, and by the way, Republicans do it too, where they'll cherry pick, they'll start cherry picking things within the legislation, and they'll say, well, this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad. Okay, but what about the overall? What about the overall positive parts of this bill? Because I think that there are a lot of positives here. This is from the Washington Examiner. You ready? The bill will make the small business deduction permanent, and it increases that by 20%. That's for small business owners. According to IRS data, since they were enacted in 2017, Donald Trump's tax cuts have helped support 2.6 million jobs, billions in GDP, and annual employee compensation also in the billions. Small businesses will also be able to invest. Once enacted, they will be able to expense research and development costs. That is huge. In other words, the Trump administration, what they're doing is they're encouraging growth. They're encouraging businesses to do research and development because they know that that's how you grow an economy. And all of these things mean that the money that we're talking about is going back to small businesses so that they can hire people, so that they can create that bigger tax base.
It generates more tax revenue. We already know that when these tax cuts, many of them that were a part of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when they were fully implemented, they in fact did result in a faster growing U.S. economy, such that ultimately they didn't really cost anything. They paid off because the growth in tax revenue more than offset the cost. And that's what we will see happen here.
All right. So again, basically not to belabor the point, but what he's saying is that we're going to have a lot of income to the federal government because of the tax decreases. People get more money. They spend more money. You get the increase in sales tax. Also, people get hired. I mean, it goes on and on. So to me, I have somewhat come around on this bill, although I do still have my reservations. But can I tell you why I don't trust the Democrats? Because the Democrats, I played you the audio of all of the hysteria of these Democrats talking about it. And I mentioned this a couple of times overnight, too, where remember the Democrats once called that massive Joe Biden spending bill the Inflation Reduction Act? Remember that? Do you remember the Inflation Reduction Act when even the Democrats said, after it passed, we really shouldn't have called it the Inflation Reduction Act because, it actually does just the opposite. And of course, we all know that inflation skyrocketed under Joe Biden, even though they told us that it wouldn't. In other words, they can sit here and they can scream. They can sit here and they can, talk about how we're going to destroy America's economy, so on and so forth. But they thought that the Inflation Reduction Act and they thought that Joe Biden's spending programs would be good for America. And ultimately, they weren't. So I'm sorry. Excuse me if I don't jump on the, this bill is a bad thing bandwagon along with the Democrats. By the way, what is good on this bill? It's going to reduce taxes by extending the Trump tax cuts from 2017, also increases the tax cuts even further. They say if this passes, the standard deduction will be $16,000 for single filers, $32,000 for joint filers, and $24,000 for head of household. Also, no tax on car loans, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, child tax credits, immigration enforcement, military funding increase, and cuts to Medicaid. Basically what it would do, and this is one of the things that everybody's talking about, basically Republicans want to institute work requirements 80 hours per month. 80. That's like 20 a week. Do you think you can handle it? 20 hours a week for able-bodied adults under the age of 65, with exceptions, including for parents of children under the age of 14. So listen, I think the Republicans, I believe that they can get this done. There's a lot of good in this for the Republican Party. And remember, if this ultimately gets signed into law, then heading into the midterm elections, will be the party that gave the American people a huge decrease in taxes, a large tax cut, and that will be huge in the midterm elections. 6:23, time to, as far as your weather for today, a high of 88, possible thunderstorms as well. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News. So, Matthew Hurtt, what do you think? What's up with the Democrats? Why are they far less proud to be Americans these days than they were back in 2001?
Well, looking at the dips in this poll, in this Gallup poll.
Well, the dips are the Democrats.
The dips are always the Democrats in this instance. They dipped the first time during the end of the 2000s in the Iraq War as the Bush 2 reelect happened. They then dipped in the first Trump election, spiked back up when Joe Biden was elected to 62%, and then back down to 36%. This is culturally the politicization of everything. If you are an average American and you happen upon this radio station but you don't think about politics, you are probably a patriotic American. If you are a regular listener of this station, you are probably a patriotic American. But if you watch MSNBC and you read CNN and you used to listen to Al Gore on progressive talk radio, your patriotism is tied to whether or not Republicans are in control. And if they are in control, you are not patriotic. And if they are not in control, you are more patriotic, but not quite as patriotic as Republicans. So this is the politicization of everything by the left. It is in our culture now. And I think it's dangerous. I think that America is the greatest country in the world. I think it is why so many people come here. I think it is why we have great companies and tech companies and other entrepreneurial adventures that take place here. People come here because of the American dream. And there is no French dream. There is no Venezuelan dream. There is no German dream. There is only the American dream, and people come from all over the world. And it is a shame that mostly Democrats here say that they're not patriotic just because somebody's in the White House or somebody's running Congress.
Let me ask you, in the news the last couple of days, Elon Musk and Donald Trump chirping back and forth again. Elon is saying that if the big, beautiful bill passes the Senate, passes the House, and ultimately ends up law, that he will, the day that happens, start a new party, political party, that caters to Americans who are worried about that deficit and all that. So, I mean, it's my contention that if that happens, if Elon Musk really does that, then that will actually help the Democrats because that splits the Republican vote. But how seriously do you take Elon Musk? Do you take him at his word that he'll do this?
Yeah, Elon Musk is showing a little bit of his South African. As I've said on this station a number of times, the American political system is a two-party, first-past-the-post, winner-take-all system. It does not support independent third parties. The Green Party, the Libertarian Party, never scratch more than about 2% of the vote nationally. It is just not feasible in the way that our politics is organized. We are not the United Kingdom. We are not Germany. We're not France. We don't have a parliamentary system of government that allows for this. Ballot access is different from state to state. Many states, it is incredibly difficult for third-party candidates to get on the ballot under a party banner, something other than independent. Tennessee is one such example. And it's just not feasible. The silver lining here is that he did say, and this is where Elon Musk can make a difference and still improve the Republican Party. He seemed to indicate in a tweet over the last day or so that he was going to support Thomas Massie in his reelect for Congress in northern Kentucky. And so I think that is where individuals who are frustrated with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, say David Hogg on the left or Elon Musk on the right, are able to do so within the primary process. That's where those decisions are made, and voters, come November, they get most of the time two choices, a Republican or a Democrat.
All right, it is 6:50 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Do you have any predictions as far as the timeline goes with this whole Vote-A-Rama thing? And eventually, when is this gonna all play out? Are they going to hit the July 4th deadline?
Well, the senators have done something they don't often do. They worked all weekend and into this week. It's a busy week in Washington, and I think the timeline, if things will come together. I think if the president wants to sign this bill on Friday, July 4th, he's going to have that opportunity. And then we're celebrating America's greatness. And, this is the 249th birthday of the greatest country on earth. And I'm so happy to be part of that here in the nation's capital.
One more question. I know that you like to go to exotic places, Matthew Hurtt, and
let's kick it.
Any plans to go to Alligator Alcatraz for your next vacation?
Dan, I was doing some research in the last segment, and this was supposed to be the largest airport in the United States in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And so, fascinating history to this location. Geographically, it's a great location to then move people out of the U.S. back to Central and South America. But Florida is not on my travel plans this year or this summer. I'm headed back to Europe a couple of more times for work over the next 2 months.
What are you doing in Europe? Where are you going in Europe? Tell me.
London next week to train European conservatives, to win again. Canada and England and Australia all three have had some depressing election outcomes. And my full-time job is helping people win elections and get jobs in conservative public policy. And so I'm headed out next week to make sure that happens again for our friends in the United Kingdom and Western Europe.
Very cool. Well, have fun with that. And I don't know if we'll be able to have you on from Europe. If not, we'll talk to you when you get back, and have a great 4th of July weekend. It is 6:51 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. And hey, Joan, you think he'll let us call him when he's in Europe?
I think probably not.
You don't think so?
He'll not only refuse your call, but he'll call police and tell them to stop having you stalk him.
He'll probably block me.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And I would tell him I've been blocked by better than you.
Anyway. How would you say that? You're already blocked.